Welcome to the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Hey, Triple P Nation, what's happening? Welcome back. It's time for another incredible episode of the Triple P Life podcast, where this week we're going to explore the tools, tactics, and strategies to help you achieve personal and business mastery. And I've got a really great guest to help us do that. Her name is Megan Dalla-Camina. I'll introduce her here just shortly. But, I haven't said this recently, and if you guys are new, probably good for you to understand what the mission of this podcast is. It's about helping you, entrepreneurs and professionals, to learn and to prove and grow in the four key areas of life, which are mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. So you can start living your best life, which is what we call your Triple P life. I'm your host, Dr. J. LaGuardia. Welcome to the podcast. It's a new year. I hope everything is off to a blazing start. I hope your goals are on track. And if they're not, in my Success Snack preview, I've got 3 proven strategies to help you stay on track to achieve your goals this year. Because that's what winners do. Winners set goals. And not just goals that we put in the back of our mind. They actually write them down. And they keep them handy. And they review them. And they review them regularly. Do you know only 3% of the people worldwide actually set goals? And of those 3%, only 10% actually write those goals down. Here's the key. There is a link between your brain and your subconscious mind. When you take a thought and you write it on paper, it's the kinesthetic pathway, which actually helps burn that into your subconscious mind. And when that thought, when that idea, when that goal becomes incorporated in your subconscious mind, becomes a part of who you are. And literally you start making decisions, moving, acting, thinking in a manner in which that are incongruent with your subconscious thoughts. So that's why writing goals is so critical. And goal setting, of course, is one of the 8 key success habits that I write in my book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Destiny, the 8 Habits of Success. And goal setting is number 8. I mean, there really no particular order, but number 8, because it really falls into line. And so if you have not checked my book out, you can do so on Amazon. By the way, it was an Amazon bestseller. I want to thank all of you who have purchased the book. But if you're serious about taking your business, your life, your health, your relationships, your fitness to another level this year, I'm going to challenge you to get the book. You're going to want it a part of your library, because in the book, I not only talk about each of the 8 habits, I talk about my experience and relationship with it, how it impacted my life. I tell you the stories of implementing these habits and how, my life began to radically change. And then I give you how-tos. So this is not just one of those, self-help personal development books where you read, it's like, oh, okay, it was great. Now what? The now what's in there? Because I've read so many great self-help books, but always am left with, now what? Well, my book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Destiny, the 8 Habits of Success, has the now what? So go buy it and figure out and put into place these strategies. So let me talk to you here about the Success Snack portion of this week's episode, which are the 3 proven strategies to stay on track. So number 1, and these are in particular order, by the way. Okay. So the hierarchy of these strategies are as follows. Number 1, know your why and have a plan and stay aligned with your vision. 2 is build accountability. And 3 is celebrate the smaller wins. So let me go through it. Guys, do you know a goal without a why is like a car without an engine? It may sound good, it may look good. It's not going to sound like anything. But you know what? You're not going to get anywhere because there's no meat and potatoes underneath that hood that's going to get you from point A to point B. So your why is the fuel behind your dreams. Now, we also know a goal without a plan is just a wish. That's why I'm saying they've got to be written, they've got to be tactical, and they've got to have specific action steps. However, one caveat. You must remain flexible in the direction that you take toward your goal. What do I mean by that? What I've learned, particularly the last 5 years, if you're living on purpose, align with your vision, what begins to happen is universally new thoughts, concepts, ideas, peoples, places, things, opportunities begin to come to you that will cause you to move in a different direction. We think we need to go left when we need to go right. We think we may need to speed up when actually we need to slow down. When we're present and we're being intentional, we're going to be able to hear and see and feel these messages. And if we're intuitive enough, we're going to know which ones to act upon and which ones not. And I believe it. It's a skill set, but it starts with being aware. So here's the why. The why is regularly connect with it, right? The driving force. The why is your leverage. Once things get tough, your why is going to keep you on track. Your why reinforces your motivation and reminds you of the big picture. Why are you doing what you're doing? And of course, the how. Create a vision board. Journal, right? Journal your goals, journal your thoughts, journal your ideas. Then, of course, you can also set reminders of your why so you can review them or review it, daily. So one place I like to keep it is in my front screen of my phone. So when I open my phone, my why is sitting right in front of me. Number 2 is build accountability. So accountability increases the follow through because you know someone else is tracking your progress. Again, early on when I started setting goals, I didn't tell other people why, because if I failed, then the only person I have to disappoint is me. Well, that may be so, but you know what? The likelihood of achieving goals without cross accountability diminishes rapidly. So tell the most important people in your life what you're going to do. State it with confidence and certainty and ask them to hold you accountable and to give you feedback. I'm telling you that will make a huge difference in your progress. Now, how? How do you build an accountability? As I mentioned, share it. Have a coach or a mentor. Lay out those goals and regularly review those goals. And number 3, you got to celebrate. Along the way, you are going to experience little wins, sometimes big wins. We think the only time that we can really celebrate is when the goal is achieved. And I'm telling you, that's the wrong approach. The mind is habit forming. And so as we celebrate wins, we get more wins. And we start to really focus on the positive outcomes that we're experiencing. And honestly, if you're not in shape and you haven't exercised in a decade, just going and buying a pair of sneakers to get out and start walking is a win. Celebrate it. It doesn't have to be extravagant. So reward yourself with these different milestones, right? Rewards can be simple, just taking the day off, going to a movie, right? Doesn't have to be extravagant. So know your why, have a plan, build accountability, celebrate small wins. We are in January, almost the end of January here now. It is time. It is time to reassess your goals. Are you on track? Do you know your why? Is your plan in place? Do you have accountability? And are you already celebrating wins? I promise if you're doing all of those, you are on track to crush this year. And I want to hear your results. I want to hear your goals. So email me, Dr. J at triplelife.com, Dr. J at triplelife.com. Let me know what goals you set, why you set them, right? And how we can help and support you. And of course, get the book, Change Your Mind, Change Your Destiny, because that's going to be a great tool to help you accomplish that. So this week, I've got a really incredible guest. Her name is Megan Dalla-Camina. She is an award-winning women's leadership and empowerment expert. She has been in the corporate world at IBM, GE, Price Waterhouse, for decades. And she decided to move out and start her own gig. And she did. She started a company called Women Rising. And so she directs her extensive knowledge and passion towards supporting women to create clarity and purpose, to help them build confidence, become authentic leaders who own their power. Her Women Rising program has empowered over 10,000 women in over 73 countries, collaborating with major corporations like Microsoft, Accenture, and BMW. and she's written 4 great books. Her latest book is called Women Rising: The Forces That Hold Us Back and the Tools to Help Us Rise, to set to create a revolution for women on leadership, work, and womanhood. A lot of great content information here. And guys, great listen for you as well too. Because our role is, the man in the household, or the male figure in the relationship, is to support our women, to help them rise and shine to their full best. Are we doing everything that we can to be supportive, encouraging, and nurturing and nurturing, and making sure that they have every opportunity to live their dreams as well too? And Megan does talk about that. So this is a great listen for you as well too. So enjoy my interview with Megan. Hey, Triple P Nation, welcome back. This week I mentioned my guest is Megan Dalla-Camina, and she is an award-winning women's leadership and empowerment expert. And she's got a very, very broad background. She's done and accomplished much in her life. And so excited to have you on this week, Megan. Say hello to Triple P Nation.
Hey, Triple P Nation. Hey, Jay. Thanks for having me on. Excited for our chat today.
Absolutely. Same here. And I'm sure, as everyone can hear, you're from the beautiful country of Australia.
I am indeed. Sydney, it's summer. I've had a swim in the ocean this morning. Life's good.
That's fantastic. It's not summer here, at least in the northern part of the US. It's very cold. So we're jealous, but good for you.
Yeah, sorry. We've just literally just hit our summer heat. So it's mostly beautiful.
Fantastic. It's a country yet I have not visited, and it's probably number 1 on our list. So we'll be coming down visiting sometime soon.
Oh, that would be amazing. We'll connect for sure. I'll show you around.
I look forward to it. So let's start. You took a pretty traditional route in your career. You did the corporate executive thing. You worked for companies like IBM, GE, Price Waterhouse, and and then you stepped out and went into the entrepreneurial space. So tell us about that, how you stepped through that experience and stepped out and pursued your own dreams, and what inspired that shift and change in your career?
Yeah, so I was 18 years corporate, and I thought I was a lifer. I thought I would be in corporate forever. And I loved it until I didn't, and it had an incredible career in Australia and Asia, in the US, and around the world. But a couple of things happened in the last decade of my corporate career. One was I had a major burnout, which is very common these days. Wasn't so common then, and gave up the job that I had worked literally my whole entire career for. I was director of marketing at IBM at the time. And that really started a shift for me. And I took a couple of months off, came back in director of strategy for IBM, and stayed in that role as a part-time executive, which again, back then was unheard of, for 7 years. And in that period was really starting to tap into my purpose, was really starting to understand, what else? What else am I here for other than being a corporate executive? And I'd been doing a lot of work around leadership, positive psychology, women's leadership, and diversity. And, it came to pass over many years that really was what I wanted to be focusing all of my time and energy on. So I built an exit strategy, as I was a strategist, as you do, and I was a single mum at the time as well. So I had to, be sensible about it and, get a financial plan together. And then created my own business 11 years ago, working in women's leadership. We do a lot of work with male allies as well, but really focused on women's empowerment. And still work with a lot of organizations, but on the other side now.
Sure. So that's fascinating. So being in the corporate world, in probably a male-dominated world, and you were able to rise up to pretty significant heights, I'm sure it gave you a unique perspective of that kind of journey, and your ability then to kind of translate and share that in your current space as an entrepreneur. You are the founder and CEO of Women's Rising. And as you kind of described how you assist women in their journey, so give us some more specificity of what that looks like with the ladies that you help.
So it's multifaceted. I mean, Women Rising, we're a leadership company, and we work in 73 countries with more than 700 organizations around the world. And the primary thing we do is called the Women Rising program, where we're guiding women on this holistic personal and professional development journey. Because there's a number of core things, and I write about these in the Women Rising book, what I call these paradoxes of power that impact women at work. They impact men at work as well in different ways, but particularly women around these unseen forces that are many of the reasons why we still see the numbers that we see of so few women at the top and in senior levels of organizations as founders who are getting funded. Like, it's really across the board. So that's what we focus on. And, these paradoxes of power are things like the leadership paradox, where women get told, we want you to lead, we want you to be in leadership positions, but don't do it like that. Do it like it's always been done. Lead in a masculine and often male form of leadership that holds men back as well, let's be honest, because it's a very atypical, version of leadership. Things like the visibility paradox: be visible, but don't be too visible. Don't stand out too much, because then women hit this backlash of what's called the likability penalty, where women can be competent or likable, but rarely both. The motherhood paradox: we expect women to work like they don't have children and parent like they don't have jobs outside the home. So there are these, and there's 6 paradoxes that I write about in the book, but there are these things, and women think that it's just them. We've had about 10,000 women in our program in the last 3 years, all ages, all stages, all, metrics of diversity, all different cultures. And the thing that women tell us more than anything else, whether they're in their own business or working in an organization, is like, I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one who was dealing with these challenges. And what women find out very quickly when they start talking to each other is, oh, actually, it's most of us. And then we get to work.
Makes perfect sense. So the 6 paradoxes, you talked about leadership, or mentioned leadership, I should say. So how, from a female perspective, what uniqueness to the female abilities or unique skill sets are not being utilized or could be utilized in a more effective manner that's unique and different than men?
Yeah, that's a great question. One of the things that we talk a lot about and comes through a lot in the research, and we're seeing it more and more in the public sphere, is this discussion around the unique traits that women bring to leadership. The research calls them feminine and masculine traits. They're non-gendered. We all have them. You have feminine traits. I have masculine traits. Does, all genders. But because of the model that we've all grown up with, this model of leadership, which has typically looked male, masculine, hierarchical, command and control, that traditional model of leadership. And a lot of women don't fit that model. They don't feel authentic leading in that model. And a lot of the more feminine traits that Brené Brown has really brought to the fore: vulnerability, empathy, authenticity, and others like, intuition, have for a very long time been disrespected. There hasn't really been a place for those traits around the boardroom table. And that was certainly my experience growing up in, the GEs and the PwCs of the world, as you said, these very, male-dominated traditional organizations. So it's, women hit this backlash. If women try and show up in their most authentic way as female leaders, we're bringing those masculine traits, but also bringing these feminine traits in. This is where we start to get into problems. This is where women get told in seen and unseen ways that that's not how we do it here. That's not how we lead here. And again, so much of it is subversive. It's under the scenes, but it's why women so often feel, and we see it in the data, of course, but women so often feel like, and I hear this from thousands of women continually, I can kind of be be an authentic leader at this sort of this mid-level, but if I want to become more senior, then what I'm being told is I need to change to do that. And I need to put on these other traits and show up in a different way for me to be successful in a more senior leadership role. And we're seeing this in corporate America, that a lot of women are saying, no, thank you. I don't want to do it anymore. And they are either sitting at that mid-management level, or they're opting out, they're leaving, they're starting their own businesses, or they're opting out of the workforce altogether.
So it sounds like the requirement is for them, if they want to rise in the leadership hierarchy, is to be inauthentic and not to embrace their unique traits that they bring to the table that are different than their male counterparts. And I would imagine, because anytime we try to be something that we're not, that leads to an incredible amount of frustration and perhaps burnout. I don't know. Is that how you kind of came to your end of your line in the corporate world?
It was definitely one of those things, and you're exactly right. For any of us, whatever gender we are, any time that we're fighting against ourselves, then we are exhausting ourselves, because the pressure that we come up against to put that mask on that says, I'm going to show up, but I'm going to leave myself over here, is exhausting. And it's exhausting on every level, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically. For me, I think it was a number of things that led to my burnout. I was a constant, continual overachiever and people pleaser, something else I write about in Women Rising. I was a single parent with, at that time, with a 5-year-old. I was trying to do my first master's degree, and I was trying to do all the things that I thought I needed to do to be successful. As a young executive, I was one of the only women on the executive team. I thought it was just me. There weren't a lot of, women role models around at that time. This is more than 20 years ago now. And I didn't have the tools to take care of myself, like all the things that we talk about now that we never talked about 20 years ago. So yeah, all of those things contributed.
I remember I read a book written by John Mackey, the former CEO of Whole Foods, and it was about heart-centered leadership. And that leadership is something that always interested me, and I, try to read as much as I can about it, because in my own life, once I began to understand and really embrace what leadership is, how it began to radically change every aspect of my life. And so his perspective on heart-centered leadership, and it wasn't written towards male or female, it was just, the nature of heart-centered leadership, gave me a unique perspective on leading with vulnerability, being willing to say, hey, I screwed up, willing to say, I don't know, but we'll figure it out, not always having to wear that persona all the time, is that I'm the guy, I know, I can figure it out. I don't need anyone's help, which we know is a very destructive way. So it's very interesting to hear your perspective on that, because it's not unique, number one, and number two, it's a really, I have found a very important aspect of leadership, where you look at some of the most dynamic leaderships, they have a very well balanced between a masculine and the feminine side of their leadership traits.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And we did some research at Women Rising last year that asked the question, how much vulnerability do you see in your leaders? Like, as a trait, how much do you see? And it was the least seen trait in leaders, 10%. 1 in 10 women said, I see a leader demonstrating vulnerability. Now, I was actually quite shocked at that, because we have been in this zeitgeist moment with Brené Brown and other leadership experts talking about vulnerability and how much we need vulnerability in leadership. And yet, when you really get down to it and talk to people, I think we're so far away from leaders showing up and actively demonstrating leadership. But it is part of this balance. It is part of men having permission to show up and say, I don't know, which goes against gender norms and goes against, this model of leadership that men have been, demonstrated. And then, of course, for women as well, for a whole lot of other reasons. So it is the goal. Yeah, it is where we want to get to. But I just want to acknowledge, it's really hard for people out there to do it it's easy for us to talk about, very hard especially if you work in a corporate culture, to show up in a meeting and say, yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I need help with this. It's tough. It's tough for people.
Never been in that level of corporate culture. I've always had small businesses, many of them. So it's a little easier in that realm, to be more humble and vulnerable. It's interesting. The first time I really practiced that intentionally, that vulnerability in the setting, boy, it was really transformational for the team around me. To sit there and make some sort of acknowledgement. Hey, I screwed up here. I ask for your forgiveness. I'll work hard better, to improve that in the future. I just think it's really fascinating. But there's not a lot of great world leaders that exhibit this either. Very few ever acknowledge they make anything wrong. In fact, they'll double down that what they did is right, even though in the face of pure evidence that it was an absolute failure. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of great examples of that. So I want to talk about the motherhood paradox. Again, being a male, not understanding this aspect, although my wife has been an incredible mother and business owner. It's something very difficult for me to understand. So talk about the motherhood paradox and the difficulties associated with that for women in positions of leadership or as they're pursuing their dreams.
Yes. And this is for, any woman who works outside the home, this can come into play. And particularly, again, for professional women who hit up against this gender construct that stems from the patriarchy, and that together with workplace norms and workplace expectations. What does an ideal worker look like? What does an ideal leader look like? That when you are at work, we expect you to be all about work, 18 hours a day, 16 hours a day, whatever the culture is. And this bind that women, particularly men, let's just call it, have different challenges. But for women, this challenge that hits the motherhood paradox, which is where society expects women to be the perfect mother, to be the good mother, to fit that ideal mother. And I think we all know what that looks like, really involved in school and doing the tuck shop and doing the class readings and, being that ideal woman at home as a mother. But then we also expect women who work outside the home to do it seamlessly and to work like they don't have parenting responsibilities. And that when those things brush up against each other, and we hit that gender norm and we hit that motherhood paradox, women at work can be seen when the bias comes into play. Oh, she's not serious about her job. Oh, she just had a baby, so she's not going to want to travel. Oh, she won't be. She's not ready for that leadership role now because she's got 3 kids at home, even though her husband works for the same company and just got promoted. All of these biases factor into play. And yeah, that's the motherhood paradox. And when women start to realize this, they have that moment of, I really did think that this was my problem. I thought that this was just me and that I'm battling this alone, but nobody else is. When in fact, if you speak to most working mothers, they will tell you some version of this story. So, men get penalized in other ways, right? Men get penalized that if a man says, I'm going to take paternity leave from my workplace, well, then all of a sudden he's not serious about his job as well. But on the flip side of that, I remember so starkly during COVID when you would see, do you remember that, that clip of the man who was being interviewed on television, and he was being interviewed And his child walked into the room, and the nanny came scurrying in and grabbed the child, and he stood up, and he's in his, he's in his board shorts, and everyone was like, oh my gosh, what a great dad. And we see that all the time. If a woman does that, oh, well, she's not serious about her job. She's not reliable.
Sure.
And so many of these things, they're under the surface, right? They're under the surface, but they have such an impact on women's lives, women staying in the workforce, women starting businesses, and how women feel about working and parenting at the same time.
Are the challenges based on also, this concept of being superwoman, supermom, super executive, super wife, all these hats that women wear typically, they're the nurturers, tend to wear more hats than the men do. How much of a role does that play from a more of a maternalistic standpoint?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think, when I was coming through in the 90s and the late 80s and the 90s, it was all about being superwoman. I don't hear a lot of women talk about being superwoman anymore. What I hear from women is that we're just trying to survive it. We're just trying to get through it, whether we're running in our own business, like I run a small business, and we're trying to look after our people and look after our families. And if you're in, a Gen X or baby boomers, you're probably trying to take care of your aging parents as well. We're just trying to get through, I think, is the case for a lot of women versus what we were taught in the 80s and the 90s, which is, this coming from the women's movements of, well, you can do it all and you can be superwoman. I don't feel we're trying to do that anymore. I feel like we're just trying to get through it.
Sure. And maybe you know this or don't. Has the trend, because it was superwoman, I'll balance and do it all, has the trend gone more towards, okay, I'm just going to focus on a career. I'll get to a family later if I get to it at all. Has there been a shift in culture in that regard?
Look, there's not one answer to that question. There has been, and particularly in the younger generations coming through, millennials particularly, this backlash against that Gen X. I can do it all. I'm going to do all of the things, and I'm going to stay home, and I'm not going to I'm not going to work outside the home. We see a lot of women who will be putting off that we're putting off having children because they see what happens, that, well, as soon as I do that, my career is going to take a hit, which is, what I was most afraid of. And then we see millions and millions and millions of women who are doing the juggle. They're doing the juggle. They're raising the kids. They're taking care of the families. They're doing their jobs and their careers and their businesses that they're super passionate about, and trying to work out how to put all those pieces together. And that's where we really come in. And what, my book, Women Rising, is really trying to do is give women the tools so that we can have our purpose, live a passionate, purposeful life, and be well and thrive while we're doing it, not just, be running on that treadmill until we fall off.
Yeah. So how do you help women find their passion? How do you help women find their purpose? And I would imagine if, like so many people, you get caught in the day-to-day grind and you either lose it, get disconnected, or forget what it was.
Yeah. Yes.
And then life becomes that grind, and all of a sudden you lose the joy, just living day to day. So how do you help women do that?
Yeah. You just articulated that so perfectly. I guess that's what it is for so many women. The thing that I always start with is, well, there's a couple of things. The first one is permission. And I think a lot of women are waiting for a permission slip to say, you have the right and you deserve the time to focus on yourself. Because women, as you said before, we are the nurturers. We are so busy doing all of the things for all of the people and taking care of everything that for, I would say, the vast majority of women that we see coming in to do our program work, there is very little them in the equation. Yeah, if they're on the list at all, they're right at the bottom of the list. So often the first piece is like, here's your permission slip to just pause and take a little bit of time for yourself. And then it's about getting clarity and asking the question, which is my favorite question to always start with, which is, what is it that you want for your life? And it seems like such a simple question, particularly when you're in the world of talking about purpose and, all of these things, as I am as well. But I would estimate about 95% of women who come into the Women Rising program do not have clarity about what they want their life to look like. And it all starts from there. Any questions around being fulfilled and being purposeful starts with, well, what do I want? So that's where we start. And then we can get onto questions around, well, how do we actually get on our most purposeful path? But we can't do it unless we first stop and say, I'm worthy of asking these questions, and I'm going to carve out some time, space, and energy to ask them.
Never consider that you actually need to give yourself permission to do so. I never thought that was an issue, but that's interesting to learn. I never thought of that concept previously.
Yeah. If you go and talk to the women in your life and ask them about that, it'd be really interesting to see what the answers are that you get. I mean, it's certainly something we see coming through in all of the research, but more important than the research is the lived experience of women, that we work with. When you ask, like, what's stopping you from crafting your purposeful path? What's stopping you from taking the next step to get clear on what you really want? When you really start to dig and go deeper and deeper and deeper, I don't feel like I have permission to do that. It's selfish. I feel guilty. It's all of those things that can stop women in their tracks.
So I would imagine those who struggle, perhaps sometimes don't have the support in their partner, or feel like their partner wouldn't give them the support, so they wouldn't even consider asking themselves that question or giving themselves the permission. Is that accurate?
Yeah, could be their partner for women who have partners. It could be that they just feel the weight of so much pressure, of so many things, that they can't even see their way through that. They can't even see between, the partner and the job and the kids and the guinea pig and like all of the responsibilities, the aging parents, whatever that picture looks like, that they couldn't even see my way through that maze to, like, where would I even start with that? And I hear from a lot of women, someone said this to me once and it's kind of stopped me in my tracks. She said, I'm so scared to even ask the question about what I want for my life, because I know deep down that if I did ask the question, it would be nothing like the life that I'm living.
I bet
And
you
how
that's
scary
true.
that is, right? Yeah. And like, I
Sure.
wouldn't be with this person, and I wouldn't be doing this job, and everything would look completely different. And that, I think, as well, is a big, not just for women, but particularly for women, is a very big factor in this as well.
Which tells you everything you need to know. I mean, if you're not living your path, if you're living someone else's life or living the life you're not meant to live, are you truly living authentically? Are you truly living, unique to your own passions and desires? And I get there's a level of selfishness to that, but there also is, you have to, be conscious of your own self needs and be true to your own self-love as well too. So it's interesting that you mentioned that because um, I would agree with you. I think there's an awful lot of people, much greater percent than we probably even want to recognize, who are not living their path. I think about it. I've been doing this work now for 30 years, and I'm sure it's been around longer, but it seems like the last 30 or 40 years where people been asking themselves these questions. What's my purpose, right? What am I passionate about? But you talk about generations previous that those conversations never happened, you know? And you think about how many were stuck in a life they never thought or desired they wanted to be a part of.
Yeah, look, I mean, every generation has its, has its bent, right? I've just come back from India where I go every year on pilgrimage. And, I think about all of those people, a lot of them from America, also from Australia, who flooded to India in the 60s, the 50s and the 60s, trying to find like, what's the meaning of life and all the rest of it. So I think every generation has their, has their path and their question. Um, but I think we're certainly in this moment right now, and we absolutely need to be when you look at the state of the world of, yeah, what is my purpose? What is our collective purpose? What is our collective path here? Yeah.
I agree. So if one of my listeners are like, wow, I really love what Megan is saying here today, if they were to reach out to you, what would that look like? What would it start like? As far as the coaching or work that you do with women.
So I guess the lowest hanging fruit, the easiest access is the Women Rising book that's just come out. It's just come out in the US. And that the book's in three parts. The first part is around the paradoxes of power that stem from the patriarchy and how we as women start to unhook from all of these social constructs and norms so that we can get to that place where we're creating our life on our own terms. The second part is all around the inner critic and the 13 archetypes of the inner critic. Like, who are you? Are you the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the empath, the ideal mother, the overachiever? That's mine. Like, what is your inner narrative? And how do you start to work through that and have those tools? And then the third part of the book is all about the tools to help us rise. So life vision, purpose, confidence, authentic leadership, etc. So I would direct everyone to the book. If you want to do other work, we have the Women Rising program, which is for any woman on a personal and professional path who wants to get more clarity, confidence, guidance around just creating it on your own terms, whether you work in a corporate or you work for yourself. And we also have a male allies program for men who want to learn how to be better allies for women at work. So yeah, they're the places that I hang out, and MeganDalla-Camina.com is where I live pretty much.
And they can find the courses and the book there or on Amazon or where else?
So book easiest, just go to Amazon, Women Rising Book, or womenrisingbook.com is the easiest place to find the book.
Yeah.
And MeganDalla-Camina.com for everything that, I've just mentioned. And a lot of just free content, resources, notes of encouragement, things that we all need.
Book sounds amazing. I'm definitely going to pick it up for a couple of women in my life. And I wish you nothing but success with it, especially now that it's being released into the States. It sounds like it's a great resource for any female, of course, but certainly those who want to do a little work on themselves and really kind of dig in and understand, maybe have a better understanding of, how they think and to give them the tools necessary to rise to the next level if they so choose to do so.
Yes. Thank you so much, Jay. I'd love to see what you think once you've had a look at it. And thanks so much for the work that you do. This is such an important conversation around purpose and prosperity. So yeah, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And the reception was incredible. Half a world away. It's great.
Funny that
technology, right? You just said, technology. What is it? You said it's 9:00 in the morning there, and I think we're 9:30. We're recording this here at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah, and we're in the future. Like, Australia's a great place. We're in the future. Everything's going great.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, thank you again, Megan. Appreciate it. Wish you nothing but happiness, success, health, and all those things into the new year here. And of course, success with the book.
Thank you so much. And to you.
Thank you. Triple B Nation, that's Megan Dalla-Camina. Make sure you check her out. Pick up her book. We'll have those links in the show notes for you, so we'll make it easy for you to find it. And as we always say, you be you. Just be the best you. And I promise you will always empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate your prosperity. Until next week, be well.